Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first dialogue as part of Global Entrepreneurship Week 2022. My name is Rudy Page, and I'm really pleased I have my colleague, Peter Hurst from Added Asset. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Morning, Rudy. Good to be back. How are you doing?
All is well. And welcome to the first Global Entrepreneurship Week dialogue for 2022.
I think it's about 22 years since we've known each other, Rudy.
It certainly is, from the old days of the Tech and Business Link Synergy project.
Yeah.
Which I must tell you that we've relaunched that back in partnership with Middlesex University, Dr. Dorian Wilson. He's taken over that role, given the academic input, and you will meet her very soon.
Excellent. Great.
Right. So
good news.
We're going to talk about Shea and the work that you've been doing in Nigeria over the last few months. But could we start with you just giving us a recap, probably a bit about yourself and a recap of the work and why Nigeria? Why Shea?
Thanks, Rudy. Yes, well, going back to our history, working together in London, helping SMEs grow their international trade from London region. That's where we got to know each other. But my background was international business before that, based in South Africa. I've lived in Africa for about 30 years, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, and done some work in about 22 African countries, with those countries. I like to say with, not in, as it's more of a partnership that I like to create with those countries. So, but for the last 12 years, I've been working on projects with the Dutch government, which is a department which works in developing countries, emerging markets, markets in transition. There's various terminology now for those countries, and we've been working on various projects over the period. And CBI, which is the division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs within the Dutch government, works on developing countries which, based on the fact that there is market available in terms of their products that they have in the European Union, and the UK, of course, still recognized as part of the team, but particularly for the European Union, demand-led products. So in the case of work I've did for 5 years, up until 2020, which was in Ethiopia, 5 years work with the coffee sector there, specialty coffee from Ethiopia. And now the current program of work for the next 5 years, or 6 years, depending on how we go, which started this year, is with Shea from Nigeria. So the Dutch government is working across approximately 40 countries. If anybody wants to look at the market information, the website is cbi.eu. Which is a really very good website for information for people who want to get involved in importing or exporting. And there's a lot of market information available there on the full range of natural ingredients, tourism, etc., which is on the CBI website, and it's all free. So it's worth having that information as well. So that's a little background, Rudy. As you know, I've been working on international trade development with other agencies from South Africa, with the German government. I am still working in Ethiopia with the German government at the moment on digital marketing. So we've been working across Africa. Particularly, I'm also working with the United Nations in Pakistan, which is a long-term project. And that's poverty alleviation, really, for the Sindh province, where all the flooding has recently occurred. It's a very tragic situation where I visited some of the worst places, and I thought I'd seen everything in Africa. But I've seen poverty like I've never seen before in Pakistan. So a lot of work that we're doing there. Absolutely. Developing cluster development, as you know, Rudy.
Yeah, and this is definitely the week for thinking about that as well. So tell us Nigeria now and Shea. You started there.
Yes, started in May this year. I've been there for 5 weeks, two 2-week trips, one 1-week trip, up until the end of October. And for me, it was my first ever visit to Nigeria, which was unusual because, as I said, I've been doing business across sub-Saharan Africa. I'd never been to Nigeria. So it was very interesting for me to go to the biggest economy in Africa, and to see what is happening in the country on the ground, and the challenges that you have to face when doing business with Nigeria. So in terms of the Shea project there, I think it's important to just state that the reason why, again, going back to what I said earlier, the demand for Shea across the world is huge and growing exponentially. So there's a huge opportunity for people interested in developing Shea products and Shea market opportunities. But Nigeria is the biggest producer of Shea nuts, and yet it is not recognized as the biggest seller or exporter of Shea nuts. And we'll come to that just now. But in terms of the program of work there, again, it's a program. I'm particularly involved in the institutional development work there. I have a local Nigerian partner who's working with SMEs there that we're bringing into the program as exporters. I'm working with the associations, the Export Promotion Council, with chambers of commerce, to develop the institutional capacity to support SMEs from Nigeria to do business with the EU and internationally, let's put it that way, particularly. So my role is to develop the capacity of those organizations to support SMEs and make the exports much more successful than they are, which is, to be honest, very poor at the moment.
Yeah, there lies the market opportunity, I guess.
Absolutely. But I think, just reflecting, Rudy, and, stop me when you want to. The first experience of Nigeria, it is a challenging place. The visa, even getting the visa situation, when most of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa now, particularly, you can get visa on entry. With Nigeria, you can. But I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's better to get the visa up front, because the airport experience is still probably one of the worst in the world, to be honest with you. They have a new airport. There's been a pretty fractious relationship with the Chinese who built it. It's opening in little bits and pieces, but at the moment, the old airport is not only physically ugly, but the whole process of immigration and getting in and out of the airport is a challenge to anybody who goes there for the first time.
Yeah, that's the persistence of entrepreneurs anyway, isn't it? If you're dedicated, you will persevere, you will get on with it, and you will just see it as an opportunity where others fear to tread. So that's how
they say. You make a plan, because I was put in touch with somebody there through another friend of mine who visits Nigeria frequently, who meets me literally off the plane, walks me through the whole process, and makes it very, very acceptable. But I think for an SME arriving there on your own first time, it's they don't. I can now help anybody who wants to go to Nigeria.
Yeah. Again, collaboration is important. Even
that's everything.
You're an entrepreneur. Okay, so you spent a few weeks in Nigeria since the start of the work to develop the exports of Nigerian Shea products with the Netherlands government, funded by the Netherlands government, as you said. So what have you learned about doing business and, with Nigeria, the challenges and the opportunities? And I guess the audience that we have is about understanding what the challenges are, the opportunities, but what the solutions are. So in a sense, I'm very much, as you know, about the solutions. So if you really tell us about the solutions that you come up with to meet the challenges that you face.
Well, the challenges are, first of all, let's put a very positive spin on this to start with, is that the Nigerian people, and I'm talking again without going back on my conversation about the countries in Africa I've been to and enjoyed every one, by the way. Nigeria has some of the nicest people in the world. I really have met some really terrific Nigerians who support me now there, and without them, my life there would be more challenging. So I've got some really good people in my network in Nigeria now. So that is one very positive outcome and I think it depends on yourself, because I go back to the saying, Rudy, that people buy people first. So if you go there, and you've got humility, and you're willing to learn, I think you can find the right people and be
Yeah.
guided to the right people. So one of the first things I would say as a recommendation to anybody doing business, I would say this in most countries, but
Yeah.
particularly in Nigeria and developing markets, is you need somebody to help you on the ground. So it's very important to have somebody.
Collaboration is key. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think we've got to really focus on some of these words so that people really understand what we're talking about, because as you said, personal relationships are important, you know, building trust, you know, confidence, you know, and not trying to think that you can outsmart somebody by not doing the right thing in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
That relationship building is essential. That's what you're really saying.
Well, you can spin your wheels a lot in trying to, you know, if you're trying to do it without any known or recommended help on the ground. It's very expensive to go to Nigeria. Obviously, even more expensive now with air tickets have gone up. Accommodation in Nigeria is expensive. You know, traveling internally is expensive. You know, you have to fly between Lagos and Abuja, which Abuja being the capital. You know, that's an expensive internal flight. So, and if you're going to cover the sort of, let's say the commercial market is Lagos, but the seat of government and a lot of the influential people are up in the Abuja area. So you can spend a lot of money in travel. And of course, Rudy, the country has virtually the north of the country is the Muslim religion, and the south is Christian.
Yeah.
And that has its own dynamics, I think, in terms of what's happening in the country at the moment as well.
Right. And I guess for this conversation anyway, we're this dialogue, we're very much thinking about those in Nigeria who are doing business, who are looking for the export opportunities, as opposed to us who want to go there, I guess.
Yes, and the thing, well, I think a lot of buyers will want to visit there and buy from the source, you know, so it's always good to have a little bit of help to do that. But I think, and to physically see, because I think a lot of people would end up in a relationship which isn't what it is said it really is in reality. So nevertheless, anyway, coming back to Shea, I mean, my experience has been, because the program of work over the next 5 to 6 years is heavily involved in the women, in terms of the women who are the collectors of the Shea nuts. As you know, Rudy, Shea is grown wild. It isn't a cultivated crop, although there are some now plantations of Shea, particularly in Ghana, that are being attempted to grow Shea. It takes about 17 years before a Shea tree produces nuts. They're trying to rush that with hybrids to get us a yield of nuts within 7 to 8 years. So these old trees are growing in the wild. The women go out to pick the Shea nuts, which is a laborious job, quite dangerous as well, for a number of reasons, which I don't need to go into particularly, but just the physical aspects of collecting nuts.
Is it being mechanized at all anywhere? Not that we want to dwell too much on this aspect of it.
No, not the collection of nuts at all. But I mean, it's important, because I think if anybody is going to buy Shea from a country, it's good to know that where the money is going hopefully helps the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And that's what our project is all about. So there are about 20 million women collecting Shea nuts across the Shea belt in Africa, and they have a really tough job.
That's a substantial workforce, isn't it? 20 million.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then they gather those in baskets, take them on their head back to the village, and that's where the processing of Shea starts.
And I can see, or we can see, how that aligns with the development aspect. You know, that wider community development, education, empowering women. So it's an essential area of economic activity, really, isn't it?
We have I mean, just so that people understand, with the program with the Dutch government, they also are spending quite a lot of money on the gender aspect, and we've now got gender experts working in the program, going out into the field, literally educating the women on personal health and hygiene, of course, and also on safety, and also developing training for them in terms of quality, so that they obviously ultimately they have to receive better money for their efforts.
So in a sense, that leads us to the importance of the development of the clusters. So could you tell us some of the work that you've done to, again, get that state of mind to, to collectivism, collaboration, cooperating as a group as opposed to just being an individual.
Well, the women at the moment, individual women collect the nuts. They turn it into shea butter in the unprocessed state. But they don't have at the moment. Many of them don't have access to processing facilities, even to take their hand processed work to the next level. So, in terms of collaboration and cooperatives and cooperation, and ultimately an economic cluster, which would be the next stage of that, is getting the biggest barrier to working together, as I think it doesn't matter if it's in London or in Lagos, is trust.
Trust, yeah.
And in the case of getting small businesses or micro businesses or to work together, it depends on trust, and building trust is not easy.
So what did you do about that then? Because obviously you went through a process in order to establish the idea of a cluster. So what was your approach, right at the beginning with these individual women?
Well, the approach is really to show them the benefits of what can be achieved as working together, hunting as a pack, if you like, as you would say, rather than as a lone wolf,
Yeah.
So it's the benefits of bringing down the big prize. And in this case, the economies of scale that can happen using shared facilities, shared processing facilities, approaching banks for funding for those shared facilities is much easier, obviously, when you're together than independent. And in terms of the market opportunity, you can bring in things like certification and quality management to a group of people, whereas one person neither can afford it nor nobody will be interested in working with that. So working with a group, certification bodies in terms of market-led certification. Again, I'm not a great believer in some of the certification agents, fair trade, you name it, forest.
They can obviously, if they're collaborating, they can establish their own accreditation and certification, ideas that link directly to the development and the good of their community and the education of young people. I mean, and that's
absolutely
that's good in terms of your approach. So of course that also has some implications in terms of sector development. So because you mentioned earlier on about some of the wider links with the chambers of commerce, obviously again established institutions when it comes to international trade. So could you talk a bit about that in terms of the sector development side as well?
Yeah, there is a Shea association in Nigeria. It's the national association. It's called NASPAN, NASPAN. You can find it online. But because the Nigeria consists of 36 states, and the Shea production is actually not across all 36 states. It's really concentrated in probably 6, but particularly the Niger state, which is close to the Abuja capital. Is where the concentration of, because it's the largest producing area of shea nuts, the association was very much focused around there, and it's where the government is and where the money is. So it wasn't a national association in reality. So I've been working with them. We're at a very formative stage still. My trip coming up in January now will be to consolidate 3 associations. The Shea Women's Association of Nigeria, SWAN, the NASPAN, which is the National Shea Organization, and the Nigerian Export Promotion Council as the 3 leading agencies. There are many others who are important and will not be excluded, but we're using those 3 particular ones to build the capacity so that they can also transfer that. So I'll be doing a lot of train the trainer work in terms of commercial skills, export development skills, and how to help the small people, particularly, get access to markets. So.
Yeah, and here I must give a plug for West London Business, who again, in terms of and you remember the days from the days when we used to promote international trade as a tool for local economic development. So
Yeah.
we will be connecting through West London business to these sector initiatives that you have, which are important for the work that we're doing at Making Connections work. We're heavily involved in the diaspora movement, and we see development as an essential part of economic development, as an essential part of the overall community development and the development of young people and communities that are peaceful and enterprising. So this connection of these channels and relationships internationally are so important. So these international trade pathways, I guess that's what we're talking about. And of course, post-pandemic, as you know, countries recovering, these relationships become important just because, you know, we can use the technology in a way that we didn't before. And I really look forward to meeting some of the entrepreneurs that you're working with on these platforms, as we've discussed, because I think the more we amplify this type of message around development and economic advancement, particularly for women, I think, you know, it's going to be good all round. It's good business, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It'll be good business.
You know, the lack of education in Nigeria to the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and to the women in particular, is a big barrier. But there are some really leading tough ladies in Nigeria. Oh yes.
And if you remember the days of sector development, remember what we used to say, Peter. We used to say that let's speak to the individuals who have done it, and they can explain to people how they've done it, because many people will feel they can't get over those barriers because they haven't got the status, they haven't got the background. And you know, we put people to demonstrate, look, we did it, you can do it, you know. And you know, so I think that's going to be really important probably for the next dialogue.
Well, I think it's a very thin line. You'll know this from where you are, Rudy, and your audience to a large degree, as a lot of Nigerian and Ghanaian people. Yeah. But in the case of Nigeria in particular, and women in business, but also, you know, it's trying to, I think, for the people who really made a success of Nigeria as an entrepreneur, they can see the benefit of being there and bringing other people up to that level that they've achieved. Yeah. It's all too easy to look at the green pastures and try to escape from those places. And youth, of course, is underserved terribly.
Exactly.
So I think it's trying to make these industries or these sectors attractive to youth is very important.
Yeah. And give them a chance, because they would have great ideas, you know, they're creative.
Very much so.
And they understand that they've got goals and ambitions just like everybody else, and given the opportunities and the pathways, that they will certainly thrive. Actually, whilst we're talking so deeply on Shea, can you just remind us what are the uses for Shea and the benefits, and why it is so important to global trade opportunities?
I think most Nigerians don't even know where their product ends up. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about Ghana in then probably just now, Rudy. But I think, you know, the use of Shea is huge in health and medical, of course, and cosmetics. So, you know, in the crudest sense, it's been used since the 14th century, by the way, as was long established as being used then, and maybe before then. But it's being used for a body cream, in other words, a moisturizer. It's been used in hair. It's certainly been used to protect from UV rays, in terms of a natural product. Of course, this is 100% natural. As a baby, you know, for baby skin, it's very, very obviously it's vitamin A and E, so it is really a very good natural product, and good for pain relief as well. I mean, I'm not 24 anymore, really, but but you know, I one of the ladies, because I've got a wonky knee now, so I one of the ladies there, she gave me a jar of shea butter, and she said, just rub some of this on your knee, and it works. You know, it's excellent. And
it's a great product, and it blends beautifully with Jamaican black castor oil as well.
That's it. And now you made a very good observation. You can
Yeah.
blend it with many other, and it's excellent for that too. So
Yeah, because
and
many
of
of the
course,
lessons that you're
sorry, go on. Yeah.
just very quickly on that, many of the lessons that you've had to learn and sharing in Nigeria can be applied into Jamaica black castor oil. You got other countries in the Caribbean that have got natural ingredients, Grenada, you know, nutmeg, all the islands have something. And so I think the work that you're doing in terms of knowledge transfer over this next year, I think is going to be really important, because those established opportunities around agriculture, because again, we're talking agriculture now, how you're translating agriculture and people understanding that many of the products, the fast moving consumer goods, actually come from agricultural products. So it's making that link and getting people to understand that. So that's why I think this work is so important, because people understand cosmetics, basically, beauty.
Well, going back to the CBI website, I mean, they've done an enormous amount of work, which is available online in terms of the work they've completed and reports they've finished with natural ingredients.
Mm.
And it goes back to agriculture, as you say, Rudy. Because 70% of employment in Africa is still based on agriculture.
Oh.
So
well,
I think
around the world, doesn't
yes,
every country in the world need agriculture? It better do.
well, even more so now, you know, without going into Ukraine and how it's affecting Africa in terms of the availability of wheat. And so, but I've got 24, I've written down 24 uses for Shea here, which I don't think I've really exhausted the use, but
can you share those with us? Can you share that with us?
Of course. Yeah, I'll email it to you, Rudy.
Yeah. I thought it was going to read it out now.
Oh, well, okay, I can
Let's
do.
quickly go through a few of them, because I think people will be really interested and, you know, be quite surprised. You know, I think it's important.
All right, let me start at the bottom, actually, which is the biggest use of Shea is actually in the food industry.
Right. Okay.
85% of Shea ends up in food industry as a substitute for coconut oil and a substitute for oil in cooking. So it's a very big and very good substitute for cocoa butter because it melts at a much higher temperature. So when you're making cocoa or making chocolate to go to hot climates, shea butter is a much better product to use. So the big chocolate manufacturers are really trying to scrape up as much shea as they can, which is a little bit, again, these big buyers are not particularly kind. Sometimes they will have the nicest policies in the world, but in reality, but 15% ends up in, if you like, in broadly termed cosmetics. But so starting at number one, so your own do-it-yourself lotions, as you said, Rudy, combining it with other lotions, it's really good. As a massage cream, many sort of elegant massage parlors in some of the best hotels, certainly in Lagos and around the world, are using it for massage. It reduces wrinkles under your eyes and bags under your eyes. Of course, as a general moisturizer, chapped heels or cracked heels and cracked lips, of course, it's a lip balm. It's also a sunscreen, as I mentioned earlier, it protects from UV. It's really good, as I mentioned earlier, as well for baby skin. It's good for restoring skin elasticity, dry scalps, moisturizing dry hair, which is very big use more and more. And I think your knowledge of that with your hair understanding really is quite good. So yeah, skin rashes, peeling from sunburn, shaving cream, it can be used as and avoids irritation and razor bumps.
Great for scalp. It's a great scalp care.
Great for scalp, yeah. Caring for your cuticles, preventing stretch marks from particularly post-pregnancy. And then what else have we got? Alleviating, muscle soreness and tension. If
you think about it, Peter, what you're describing, creative people, great ideas, branding ideas, the products and services that can be created from such a natural product. I mean, it's unlimited, isn't it? If you think about
the value addition, Rudy, is immense, because I mean, that's where the Nigerians are not tapping into the opportunity enough. for their own benefit. I'm talking about.
That's why you're there.
That's why I'm there, Rudy. One man.
But also, I think what we're doing as well, because that Shea, though that same tree is in the Caribbean as well, but it's got a different name.
Okay.
So, and I can't remember the actual name, but I know the tree is there. But I think the most important thing is the market opportunity, the structures, the collaborations, and institutional development. And maybe you could talk about that side, because the reality is, as we know, coming from the business link background here in the UK and the tech, it's the institutions that are important to enable, to support the entrepreneurial activity, so it becomes something that's, you know, collective value, that you can then go out and compete. So I'd be interested to know a bit more about your institutional thinking to the development of this work as well.
Nigeria, well, I can talk broadly about it, but Nigeria specifically has not developed its institutions to the level of other countries in the region.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of your work there.
Oh, my work is going to
because I think what people are really interested in is that they understand the challenges that are there, but what they want to get from people in terms of knowledge transfer, those are people like yourself who understand, okay, what do we do? There's a status quo, and in order to achieve market opportunity and the benefits and the value of that market, what do you do? And that's the knowledge transfer, which I think is really important, that you have that experience.
Well, in the case of, let's say, in the case of Nigeria, and again, it was a case in Ethiopia also, was picking winners.
Yeah,
You know, you have to work with people who've got the right attitude to start with. And I'm talking about the associations and the institutions. So that's why we've selected the three we've selected.
Excellent.
Because they have an attitude and an interest. It's like anything in the work, Rudy. Attitude is everything. You can teach the rest.
Yeah.
So from our point of view, you know, is working with the right associations, and particularly finding a women's association that we can build, because ultimately women have to be the face of this this product, and instead of being in the background where the men make the money and the women make the product. So this is the way we're treating this, because gender is probably the largest component of this, other than the work we're doing with the other development areas of the program. But working with these institutions is, firstly, we have to understand fully what they do already.
Right.
So, you know, what they say they do and what they actually do can be two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when you start identifying and really giving them a thorough audit to find out what they really do, and asking their customers, the members, what do they do? So, because they may walk around blowing a big trumpet, but the reality on the ground is really the small businesses. How are they benefiting? So, and that's been quite important as the start, which I'm still doing, by the way, is establishing and assessing. So my work will then be to build the capacity based on a gap analysis of what they're doing and what they should be doing.
That's excellent, because there's an initiative in Jamaica called African Gardens, Women in Agriculture and Entrepreneurship. And, you know, they've extended some of that work to actually having a farmer's market. But again, developing that institutional infrastructure is really the next step. And it's all women led as well, across the age range as well, which is great. So I look forward to getting some alignment between them as a group and with the associations that you're working with. And as we said, also linking them to the broader chambers of commerce and other institutions where we can promote, you know, what they're doing. So that's really great.
One important point there with institutional development, and whether it's for local or international trade development, is that SMEs don't value free products.
Yeah,
giving free services, you know.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you make your offer attractive as an agency, an association, or then people will contribute some small amount towards that because they can see the financial benefit in their business ultimately.
Yeah.
So the income generation aspects of this trade development initiative, which I'm working with, are also about market-led services. In other words, what do the customers, the SMEs want? What are they willing to pay a small contribution towards? So that the agencies can actually not just they have to walk the talk, and not just public. They don't have the resources, but they also need funding. And that can't always be coming from the government, So I think the private sector has to support their agencies in some small way.
Yeah.
I know it's always a sensitive subject because people think if it's a government agency, everything should be free.
Absolutely. And going back to the importance of the agency point that you just made there, it kind of then brings me to the whole focus around supply chain collaboration, because obviously these same private sector organizations need suppliers, contractors, subcontractors. So has there been much work, or what has been your work around the whole supply chain collaboration?
Well, we're very involved in the value chain and supply chain, really, across the work I'm doing in Pakistan included, and as it was in Ethiopia. But going back to the development of cooperatives and clusters, it's to give them the opportunity to be able to use things like when they're purchasing raw materials or purchasing chemicals, for instance, or purchasing fabrics. In the case of the textile work I was doing, is being able to do it with economies of scale, and then hiring logistics, trucks, and the processing plants, and getting things to market. Hiring, for instance, in the case of dairy products in Pakistan, is the cold chain, providing a cold chain which benefits everybody. So the supply chain and the value chain analysis, which we do, is also very important to these programs.
Yeah, no, that's essential. Great. So, Peter, as we come to the end of this, people want to know, how do they get hold of you? How do they get involved in the program if they're in Nigeria, if they're looking for opportunities, but need international trade support, both institutionally or as individual SMEs? So could you?
Yeah, well, you have my contact details, and I'm quite happy to be a clearing desk to do that, by the way. So I mean, I've got people on the ground now in Nigeria, totally trusted people, women in Shea, for instance, people in institutional development there that are keen to help. Right across the supply chain again, in terms of the availability of cosmetic products which are ready to go to market, and already being sold internationally, and can be available online, for instance, right through to raw shea butter, which can be then brought into the UK, in your example, and processed there. The process, of course, has been mostly, in the case of shears, has ended up in Ghana. I think that's a subject we haven't quite touched on today, but Ghana has the reputation as the shear capital of the world, and yet it doesn't have the shear nuts that Nigeria has, but it has been agglomerating all of those shear nuts from the region, and they have been invested in large processing capacity with international support.
Maybe that's a regional strategy anyway. I guess sometimes you focus where investment, skills, relationships.
I think that's another avenue to be encouraged from anybody who might be interested, Rudy, is that investing in the Nigeria share opportunity can be guided now with the good people we have on the ground. I mean, there is a fear, for reasons that that Nigeria is a place where you don't want to invest your money. I mean, I don't have to say that to somebody like yourself who knows that has a reputational damage already. And the Nigerians are well aware of it, by the way, Rudy. It's not just an insensitive view.
As I always say, though, but there lies the market opportunity. That's the reality, isn't it? risk,
Well, one thing I didn't
entrepreneurs
mention
risk.
is that we have a branding expert who's just been with me in Nigeria now. We're going to brand the national Shea Nigeria, so to raise its
Excellent.
profile.
Yeah.
So that branding strategy, which is being done by a local team that we've got on board.
Yeah.
We will have a Nigeria Shea brand, a country brand, and that will be to raise the profile of Nigeria Shea. And then underneath that brand, we can start to build, which I'm doing now, is the sector export marketing plan, which I'm doing now over the next year or so.
Yeah, excellent. And you know, we're happy to help amplify that.
No, I know you have been, Rudy.
Well.
That's as usual. So talk of collaboration, Rudy. I think you and I have collaborated very well on a number of projects, and if we were really good at Rudy, we'd be playing golf. So
absolutely. And just to give you a statistic, it's next year will be 20 years since we did the first event in Joburg, the Joburg Chamber of Commerce. You know,
I remember it well. But Rudy, you haven't aged. You must be using shea butter. You haven't aged.
Yeah, it's a blend of shea butter and Jamaican black castor oil.
Great.
Great, Peter. Right, so we didn't quite get, in terms of contact information, website details, telephone, if you can give us that quickly before we go.
Yeah, my website is, I've got a Nigerian guy at the moment, very good guy, doing my website. My website is down. I think there's a landing page, that's all. Right, so I've made good acquaintance with also somebody that I can introduce other people to, not for website development, but he's in the agribusiness sector as well, and also into poultry, working with the Dutch government as well. I'm Peter, that's PETER at addedasset.com. So that's ADDED, ASS for sugar, ET for Tommy, addedasset.com. That's my email address, or info at addedasset.com. As I say, the website is addedasset.com, but you won't see anything there. It will in the next month be ready.
Your email's pretty straightforward, Peter at addedasset.com.
That's me.
Right. And if anybody has any challenges, they can get hold of Making Connections work. I'm happy to pass on Peter's.
Great, Rudy. No, we'll work together. Yeah, we're happy to do that. And I will introduce any people to people in Nigeria who will be very helpful for them.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. Take care.
Great to talk to you, Rudy. Great to talk to anybody who's listening, but thanks, Rudy.
See you very soon. And everyone, just before I go, we'll be back on tomorrow talking about, again, clusters, collaborations, networks, focus with colleagues from Ghana. And all these programs will be rebroadcast again on Fresh FM Radio London, our main media partner for Making Connections work. And this is our focus on diaspora affairs and development for Global Entrepreneurship Week 2022. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you, Rudy. Great to talk to you. Thanks a lot.